Hi to all of my 7 viewers. This will be a different type of video today. I'm going to be responding to a podcast by Dave Tate. I had a chance to listen to a bunch of stuff while I was out sick. I still have a little bit of sinus trouble, so if I can't breathe, that's why. So I found one of his podcasts particularly interesting. He was covering this topic, and one of his viewers asked him about the future of females in powerlifting, so female coaches in particular in powerlifting, and that was a big topic for me. And I was looking forward to Dave's response to the question, but Jim took all of the airtime, Jim Wendler. So I'm going to address what Jim said because Dave didn't really have much input or wasn't able to give as much input. So Jim was saying things to the effect of, it doesn't matter if you're a man or woman, you have to have accomplished something in order to be respected by people and to be taken seriously. I'm going to start off by saying I don't think anyone disagrees with that point. You definitely want to have qualifications under your belt in order to be taken seriously in any industry. And I don't think that was the question. I think that missed the point. I think the point is that if you take a male and female coach, specifically we're talking about strength and conditioning coaches, and they have the equivalent qualifications, it appears that generally women are taken less seriously than their male counterparts. I would even go so far as to say that women could be a little bit more qualified and still not be taken as seriously. So I believe it's irresponsible to say that you haven't done shit, as he says, if you haven't been training for like 30 plus years and you don't have world records. I don't think that you necessarily have to be this great athlete in order to be a great coach. I think we see that often in professional sports in particular. And I think that we all start somewhere, and not everybody starts in strength sports when they're younger. And not everybody has the genetics to be amazing or they choose not to take recreational drugs to expedite the process of them becoming great athletes. But we won't really get into that. I think that we have to kind of be realistic in our expectations and keep in mind that you don't necessarily have to be the best of the best in athletics in order to be the best coach. So in order to not miss the point of the question, I would take a look at people with the same experience, same qualifications, same education. So you could compare 2 people who are just starting out, or 2 people who are 10 years in, or 2 people who are 20 years in. So you want to compare apples to apples. You don't want to compare someone who's newly starting out with someone who's been doing this for 30 years. That's a completely different topic, right? You want to compare those, and then what you tend to see, or what I tend to see trend-wise, is that you get these highly qualified women who are competing with not on the same level as not so qualified men, meaning that these women might have been training for decades, or might have these records, or might have the experience. And they're being hired by the same ratio of people as like somebody with much less experience than they have. So I would say there's like another factor that goes into that too. And what I typically see, and I don't like to categorize people, but if you take a woman who looks more masculine, and that could be either the way they dress, or their musculature, like how advanced they are with their muscle mass, or their behavior, things that are typically considered more masculine versus feminine, you tend to see that on a sliding scale of masculine to feminine, those who are more masculine tend to get more respect than those who are more feminine in strength sports. I think that's a problem right there, because you shouldn't be judged based on the way you look or the way you dress for how well you could do getting someone stronger, right? So often what I see is you see these really, really high caliber women, like they might be at the top 1% or top 0.5% of all women, and they're comparing with men, they're competing with men who are maybe in the top 20%. So and I know that there's more of a pool of men, but I'm talking like beside that point. I'm talking strictly qualification wise. So I did find a huge issue with Jim's portrayal, of women in the industry. He mentioned something along the lines of, women use their bodies to sell training programs, and your TNA is only going to last you so long, and people are good, all that stuff. And I thought that really is a separate topic. I think it's very unhelpful in regards to enhancing societal attitudes about female strength and conditioning coaches for a few reasons. And I'm betting the majority of the viewers of Dave Tate's podcast are younger males, and it might be sexy to point the finger at women and to talk about women who sell fit tea, and you want to get a chuckle and a nod from all the dudes sitting at home on their couches. But drawing comparisons between female strength coaches with individuals who are selling fit tea on Instagram is not only damaging to the portrayal of women in strength, but also pretty ignorant and insulting, because that's two completely different things. And I will give you a few reasons for that. So both men and women, as we know, on Instagram use sex to make money, and it's true in all fields. Sex sells. And we see bodybuilders posting, like male bodybuilders, posting shirtless selfies all the time, selling their training programs, and they might not even have any qualifications. But selling a training program does not make you a strength and conditioning coach. So Jim's frustrations in that regard are misdirected. And like I said before, what a woman wears or what she looks like is completely unrelated to how strong she could get her clients. So if you have a person who is selling training programs on Instagram and they're a female, that does not make them a strength and conditioning coach. It happens to be just a person who thinks that they can make money doing something, so they do it. And it's completely irrelevant. And again, men do it too, so it's misdirected. For you to sit there with your platform and to say, women do this, like almost implying that female strength coaches sell fit tea on Instagram. That's so a little bit sliding towards sexist. I don't want to, again, label anybody, but I think that's what it kind of hints to. But to get back to the point, you see a lot of scrawny males, and scrawny meaning less muscular and not trying to be insulting at all, having tons of clients who worship them for their knowledge, right? But a woman needs to be at the top of her game. She needs to fit these criteria. She needs to meet some sort of expectations, right? In order to get the same respect. So I think that's where the discrepancy lies. I will say one thing though. Jim's passion is infectious. He believes people should make something of themselves before trying to step into the game. But the difference between people who have done great things and people who will be doing great things is time. So if you have a young up-and-coming 20-year-old who studies strength and conditioning and has been training for, let's say, a few years, this person should be qualified to coach people. So maybe they coach beginners, for example. And this should be regardless of their own gender or the client's gender. And if a woman coaches for 30 years, because this is like an arbitrary number I selected based on what I heard Jim talking about. If a woman coaches for 30 years without being given the opportunity to taper their way into that, without gaining experience, specifically coaching men, the lack of opportunity for coaching men in and of itself would make her less qualified in 30 years' time to coach men due to the huge gap in her experience coaching men. So, and there are differences between sexes in terms of coaching. And anyone who's had experience in this field will tell you that men and women respond differently to cues, to different coaching cues specifically. And the more time and experience you have working with both genders, the more you're going to be able to hone your craft. And this includes different working with different personalities and people with different varying degrees of training experience, right? So the problem becomes that a male coach who is younger and less experienced receives greater opportunities, especially for coaching men, than women do. And I think that divergence is a result of attitudes in general. I think women are more likely to hire men than men are to hire women. And I'm not sure why. I've asked people this question, and the answers I've been given don't satisfy my need for my, I guess, curiosity, you could say. And there might not be an answer, but I think that even discussing this question is important because it makes people think about it. Now, I don't think I'm going to change anybody's mind about the topic, but I do think that at the very least, this is going to encourage thought in those that are open-minded enough to receive it. I think Jim and Dave have a platform to make a bigger impact, and I do think that Dave cares enough to at least try to make a difference. So I'm not going to sit here and whine and cry about how things are unfair for women, because that's not the point. The point is that the general attitude toward women needs to change if they're going to be given a fair shot in the strength and conditioning field, meaning that waiting to give women the opportunity to do something only after they've proven themselves, when we don't wait for men to prove themselves, is a problem. Putting blind faith into a male and not putting the same blind faith into a woman is a problem. I do think that we're on the front end of the problem, and that as more women do prove themselves in strength and conditioning, the problem will fix itself. I do believe that women and men have fundamental physiological differences. Men will be stronger on average than women due to their physiology. And on the same token, women will always be more technically proficient due to their physiology. And it isn't a matter of wanting men and women to be the same. Men and women may have different coaching styles. I don't know. The point is that regardless of how strong a woman is, that fact alone does not affect her ability to make a man stronger. Just because a woman is strong or accomplished in a sport doesn't mean she'll know how to coach you in a meaningful way. And just because a woman's not stronger than you doesn't mean that she won't be able to help you get to your goals if she was given the opportunity. A coaching relationship works when the client respects the coach, and vice versa too. I believe that's the underlying and maybe subconscious problem between men and women, or better yet, men's attitude toward women. And I'd like to hear back from Dave. I really didn't get a chance to kind of see his opinions on the topic. He was kind of drowned out in that podcast. I admire that Dave implements feedback into what he does. I think it's a sign of maturity. I think it takes a mature man to realize women have a strong role in our lives and in the field of strength and conditioning. I appreciate the fact that he has a woman hopping on his podcast coming up shortly. I'll be tuning into that. Dave also mentioned that he, has mostly women working for him. I didn't know that, but I'm not surprised. There's a lot of women in administrative fields. A lot of women do really great work. And although I'm I'm glad that he mentioned that. I'm glad he discussed in his podcast that he's open to receiving articles from women, and he's posted articles from women for I think he said 20 years or so. I think all that is really great, but I think that's a different conversation. I think women in strength and conditioning need to be respected for their knowledge and for their capacities, same as men. I think Jim, what he said is that we judge men and women equally. We judge you by what you're capable of, and it sounds nice. In theory, it sounds nice when you say that, but I don't think that's the case, and that's the problem. I think that women and men who are equally qualified don't get looked at the same. And you could tell just by hiring trends. You see a lot of men will have purely women as their clientele, but not a lot of women will have men purely as their clientele. It just doesn't work that way. When you look at the numbers, when you look at the trends, and I don't have hard numbers for you, so I can't tell you for sure. I could just tell you by what I've seen. You just don't see it happen, and I would like to see that addressed. I don't like that I don't like that it was blown off. I think that minimizing the differences between genders doesn't help solve the problem, and I just want to see it addressed, and I think Dave cares enough to address it. So I appreciate you taking the time to watch my video. Please subscribe if you like this video, and I will see you guys soon. Bye-bye.